Hey everyone, this is going to be a quick video on the Thermaltake View 380 Air. This case will come in assorted colors, but as of right now, I believe you're getting the yellow, caramel, the white, the black, and the future dusk, which is kind of a bluish, well, dark bluish purple. Now, I have in front of me the Air version, but there is going to be a variant where there's glass in the front, and that'll be called the non-Air. Now, they did show this case at Computex. I think one may have been at this year's CES as well. I don't really recall. But I'm just quickly go over the general layout and features of this case and how this build is put inside this case. I only had really about half a day with this case to put this together before I really had to put something out for launch. So I didn't get into all the nooks and crannies of the case, but I have a general idea what you can expect in terms of build in this case for those of you that choose to purchase one. Now, with that said, let's quickly just address the main selling point, I think, for a lot of folks, and that would be the curved glass top. Right. We don't have many cases with curved glass, on the very top at least. And that is a selling point here. I think Thermaltake did one before. EK had one that was like this. Maybe missing one other brand or two, but it's not common. And obviously for those of you that like this look, you know, you can't beat it because you can see your stuff from the top. You can see your stuff from the sides. It's a cool look. And I think they did a good balance of airflow and having a curved glass. So let's just quickly start with the front of the case and then we'll move on to the other parts of the case and so forth. So you can see here, I have three 120mm fans because I have a 360mm radiator that's 60mm thick behind this. Now, by default, it actually does support two 180mm fans, which is what they show off on display. Slight correction here, guys. It is actually two 200mm fans that are being used in the product, photos, and so forth. It does support two 200mm fans in the front, not the 180 that I was speaking of, although it can technically support 180mm. So any future reference to 180mm fans in this video should be 200mm fans. Builds for this case, two RGB 180mm fans. Now those fans, while they are in the product photos, they do not actually come with the case. I'm trying to figure out if that's just because I have an early sample, or is that because that's just the way it is. I can't find 180mm RGB fans from Thermaltake at all for sale. Once again, it is 200mm fans, and you can buy them on Amazon, the RGB ones and the non-RGB. I'll put a link in the description below. So I'm curious to what fans they used. They don't look like 100mm fans, say from Fractal Design, that are RGB, but that is one source as well for you those that can purchase the fans. I'm going to try to find out. I think the case price point may have been put on, but depending on the price point and, you know, the fans being included or not is acceptable or not acceptable, right? This front fascia is actually metal. Most of this case on the outside is actually metal. Like this top is metal, the bottom is metal, so there's a lot of metal on the exterior of this case. So if you wanted a powder coat, you can feel free to go at it. That pretty much covers the front, aside from the fact that you could also use two 140mm, but I think that's going to look pretty funny because it's not going to take up the whole space. Even with the 360 here, that you see this whole entire gap that I feel can be filled with two 180s a lot better. Now, you could use two 180mm, like a dual 180mm radiator. I think only AlphaCool sells those now at this point. But that is another option. Generally speaking, I would kind of avoid water cooling this case in general. I'm going to go into why in a second here. But with that said, let's move on to the back. Pretty ugly back. I didn't spend much time on this, so that's why it looks like the way it does. Also, you can see I just have tubes just running all over the place. I'm using cablemod cables. I couldn't find the peripheral green one. That's why I'm using a blue, because I kind of keep all my cables to the same PSU pinout just in a bucket. But I'm using a Thermaltake PSU over here. I'm going to guys give you a warning about this PSU support. For the GF series, you'll notice that on the back of your power supply, there's this kind of raised bump over here where the outlet plugs into. That bump actually gets in the way of the case. Now, I've only seen it on the GF3 Thermaltake power supplies. And, if I tried my Asus power supplies, some of the other Corsair ones I have laying around, it doesn't actually get in the way. It's only this series. And that's the really ironic part, is that It's a Thermaltake power supply. Granted, it's made by CWT, I think. It's just not a good look when your own power supply gets in the way. Now, I've resolved this issue by just using longer screws, like longer thumb screws to hold it in. So it doesn't sit 100% flush. It's like literally 3 millimeters of the case that's getting in the way. But you know, unless you're using a GF 3 series, even though I did, it still got it on. But that is something that you want to look out for. So if you run into that issue, it's not your case. It's all the cases from what I understand. It's just an oversight, which is kind of a shame. So moving on, the power supply is actually in the middle. For those of you wondering why that is because this case does support BTF, and having it on the bottom, which rather would be ideal, would block the bottom connectors. Now, on the bottom, there's actually no support for drives either, which is kind of strange, right? There's just this empty space at the bottom with tie downs for zip ties, which I don't think is the greatest use of space. At least I think, you know, even though it's probably not ideal in this case, it would have been nice to include maybe a water pump bracket that you can mount down here. Right, that would have been a nice add-on. But I think with this case, they actually designed this for you to use an AIO, right? So you have 360 millimeter radiator support here for an AIO and two 180 millimeter fans in the front. And that's kind of, I think, how most people are going to run this case, right? Very few people are going to do what I did here. As you can see, I'm just using a pass-through panel here. And even then, there's not much space between this part and this tab, right? You literally have 25 millimeters. Okay, so I've actually raised this plate forward by 15 millimeters just so my fittings wouldn't hit the door. So this is not flush against the back, which also brings one more thing into question. So this is the wire cover that you get with this case to kind of go here and just clean up your wiring mess, right? On here, you can also mount drives. Now, but if you were to mount drives on this thing, you'll notice that your wires on the drives, number one, you don't have much space, right? Because it's literally flush against it. So you're mounting drives on this side. So you can see while you may be able to mount SSDs just fine, I think if you were mounting the traditional 2.5 inch, you might run into the PSU. You know, you might have some difficulty doing that. I didn't try it, but it just looks like there might be some difficulty. But you know, it is what it is. And at the very top here, you can see that you're probably wondering why there's a cutout here. Now, Thermaltake does sell a small mini screen, but they also have a new screen that's coming out with this case, which is a 6-inch screen, which is they're using for a lot of the newer cases moving forward. Like on the bottom for I think the View 390 XL or something like that whenever it comes out, or View 600. Yeah, sorry, it's the View 600 whenever it comes out. This 6-inch LCD I do not have, so I can't show you guys, but you would seriously just be slotting it like right here through the front. I put an 8.8 inch in the front because I didn't have that LCD. Otherwise I would have used it. But that's why this is here. But it also breaks down so you can use a smaller, traditional, older one they had that they've been selling for a couple of years now. I forgot the size of it, but that's an option as well. Other than that, I found the front I/O cables to be of good length. The I/O panel is actually on the top here, which is kind of weird. But you also will have to remove this I/O panel. It comes off just 2 screws in order to put the screen in from the back. That's one more thing I wanted to point out. But yes, so with that said, let's move on to the front where it looks much better. Obviously, much better looking side of the build. Let's just quickly go over this. So the parts I have here is a Z890 Extreme. So you can see that even though I have an EATX motherboard, it does not go too much past the tray, and it still looks rather fitting in there. Now, one thing I have to give it to this case is the grommet. The grommet locations are perfect, guys. You do not have to jam things up grommets or anything like that, or a weird angle. You see my 24 pin is dead lined up straight coming out of that grommet. So I really like that grommet placement. Overall, the hole placements for cutouts, whatever, are really, really good. They even have a cutout at the bottom for you to run the fans through for the bottom fan support, which I'll talk about in a second here. But outside of that, I have a Tri-X AIO that I've converted to the water block using, here, I'll show you guys. I'm using an adapter like this. This is essentially once you remove the tubes from the AIO, you can put the O-rings onto here, stick it in, and it converts to the 2 G14s, right? And you can use that to attach regular fittings and so forth. Now, a quick word about the Tri-X water block. While I did not get one, I did play with one at Computex. I can tell you it's the same thing as the ROG water block, outside of the screen implementation. Okay, so on the water block, when you buy it, there's no pump, there's no temp sensor like the AIO pump has. The AIO has. So that's one of the differences, and it also comes out directly with 2 ports at the bottom, which I've said on the ROG was a terrible implementation. And since it's the same water block with a different screen, it's the same terrible implementation. Okay, so that's what I have to say about that. All right, so moving on, you can see I have an Astral in vertical mount. You can see even with the 60mm radiator in the front, I have plenty of room for this GPU. It's a little bit snug, but it's still easy to come in and out. All right, I'm not banging against it. So, you can have your fun in the front and still have room for a large GPU. Okay, so, but normally, you put two 25mm 180s in the front, which there is a bracket here that the radiator is mounted on. The fans would just be here, and this side would be completely empty. So let's just say you had a super long GPU that came out to here even. Like, this is like 14.5, right? So if you had something that was like 16 inches, you'd be fine. Okay? Or in the rear plate here, well, I'm using it as pass-through panel. As I mentioned, this is your default placement for your AIO. Granted, you could put it in the front, but I think obviously it's going to look a lot better on the side. In terms of water cooling, you could do a 360 here, 360 here, a slimmer one, but it's not going to look good because you're going to cover half that radiator, and your runs are going to be not the most exciting things to do. Because like I said, you still have to makeshift some type of pump res mount in the back. And on top of that, if you're using a pump res CPU block, it's probably going to be a lot easier. It's not doable. It's just not going to look that good. Because I think this case really is designed for you to have that AIO on the side, good fans in the front, 2 good fans on the back for exhaust, and for additional cooling, 3 120mm on the bottom. This case does support 3 120mm fans on the bottom here, and you do have a fan filter in the front. It slides in and out. Quick word, if for those of you, install the fans first before you install the vertical GPU mount, which is this thing. The back of the case, the IO rotates 90 degrees, allowing you to, not have to buy any extra hardware to do a vertical mount, right? Since it rotates the entire IO, you have, I think 7 slots of vertical, assuming the card is small enough or whatever you're trying to do. It does not come with the riser cable. You have to buy your own, but the riser cable has 3 default positions that you can put it into. I'm kind of restricted in positions because this card is like 4 slots almost, right? So I don't really have that much, space to change things, right? But you can if you have a slimmer card or you're using this for another purpose. All right. And at the very top, as I was talking about earlier, there's a new 6-inch LCD that would fit this entire area here. But since I didn't get it in time, I decided to put an 8.8-inch there just so we didn't have this blank space. This is a USB based screen. It's just putting out some stats. And I kind of went with the Attack on Titan Levi theme because it's one of my favorite animes. I think it's popular for a lot of people, and I like the character. So that's why I did what I did. But other than that, overall building experience in the case, very smooth, not frustrating. This looks great on the front, not so great on the back. But yeah, I put this together like really quick, guys. I didn't have any snags with the case at all. But I would say, one more thing before I forget. The case does come with 2 120mm fans, just plain black fans like this. They come on the rear. Those are the only 2 fans that came with the case. And for those of you curious about what fans I'm using for the front and the side there, these are the new Thermaltake EX120 ARGB sync. They don't use a controller. They pretty much just do motherboard control or RGB 3-pin controller. And they come in white or black. Whatever is black is going to be white on the white. Okay, so they light up the edges in the frame rather than the fan blade themselves, which is something I actually prefer. But that it is what it is. And with that said, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Overall, like I said, I had no issues building in this case. I don't like the drive support. That's pretty much, I think, the only downside. Outside of that, the small snag with the PSU, which is just a poor oversight, given the fact that it was a Thermaltake PSU that I had issues with. But yeah, overall, I like it. I'll probably redo the back nicer, and I'll actually have this probably run as my CAD box or something. just cause. But yeah, so the curved glass is the main selling point. But yes, you get an I/O on the top. You get, what was that? 2 USBs, a USB-C, your mic and headphone jack. And yeah, so overall, no real complaints. I'll put the price, I think it's 100 something. I'll put the price like somewhere on the screen. But yeah, solid case. With that said, thanks for watching. Stay safe and take care.